Hey, it's Mark Schultz here, and welcome to another episode of Building Experiences with me, Mark Schultz. We've got a great show coming up for you today, talking about some new innovations coming out from Adobe. But of always, it's all about the guest that we bring in, and we've got a really great guest today. So let's introduce our guest. Been with Adobe for almost as long as me, brought him in through an amazing acquisition through Day Software, and someone that I get a lot of value out of spending time with. So without further ado, let's introduce Cedric. Hey Cedric, welcome to the show.
Hey Mark, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for spending time. I know you're very busy lately, releasing a lot of amazing technology.
You're welcome. No, I mean absolutely. I think on one hand you have these times where you kind of ship, and then there's the times where you have to talk about it. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into that, for those who don't know you, what's your background? What do you do at Adobe?
Yeah, so I'm the lead product manager on two teams. On one hand, I'm leading the team that decides and does the product management for Adobe Experience Manager sites and screens. And in this, same role but different team. I'm on the Adobe Commerce team and responsible for storefront. There's a reason why those two are combined, because we are planning on using the same technology going forward for storefronts and for our website, which I think probably makes a lot of sense. Hopefully it does. At least it does to me.
Yeah, so you've been with the site, Steve, for some time. What's the first version of AEM that you worked with?
5.0, which was in
Yeah, C,
2007.
so CQ
So
5.0. So it's
that's right.
so maybe an understatement to say there's been a bit of change since then.
Yeah, we're trying to like every 6 to 7 years actually, where you can put it on a calendar.
Yeah,
Every 6 to 7 years, we're doing a bigger significant change. Um, another joke that we made the other day is like whenever we hit 1,000 customers using one thing, you have to redo it, and that's maybe it doesn't hit that well if you say it that way. But sometimes it takes that amount of years to for getting that adoption. But it's certainly true that to stand the test of time, technology has to evolve,
yeah,
and you have to make one. There's two ways, right? One, technology gets old if you don't do anything about it, but the other thing is you have disruption coming in from the outside. Now you can either wait for that disruption to come and disrupt you, or you disrupt yourself. And I think we're more in the camp of trying to figure out what is it that we, might hit us at some point, and where could we produce more value for our existing customers, and hence we're kind of, again, I know that like every 7 years or so we're
yeah.
introducing bigger changes, which are kind of like a disruption for ourselves, but again, always with good intentions, to achieve more and make sure we can deliver better value for our customers.
I think that the bar of experience keeps being raised, right? And so it's about how do we keep all the brands that rely on Adobe? How do we keep them there? So I think we've got a lot to talk about. So
That's
let's
right.
let's actually get to our feature, which is Edge Delivery Services. All right, for those who haven't heard about Edge Delivery Services, Cedric, let's actually get straight into it. Let's start with the basics. What is Edge Delivery Services?
Okay, excellent question. There's different ways to describe it, but I start with an architectural way of describing it, and then I'm going to go more into the value of what we're trying to achieve. The architectural way of looking at it, it's basically the missing head for headless. So in a CMS architecture, you got the repository and you got all the governance and whatever is required for managing the content and your content velocity. And you get any and all things that are required for actually delivering the experience itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a decoupled architecture, you would call one thing the headless CMS, which is in CSF, and then you would call the head, I guess, if you use the word headless, to describe the delivery system. And so Edge Delivery Services, as it has in the name, delivery, is really that head that we are, making a new suggestions of, or putting a new proposal out there, how that head should work. On one hand versus, I guess it has worked in AEM so far. That's changed for existing customers, but also generally for, I think, the market or the CMS space as a whole, where we feel like there needs to be a slightly different approach to, I guess, the head or the delivery of that. So I think that's the kind of architecturally view. The more value way of looking at this, what is Edge Delivery Services? It is really here as a set of services that are here to make sure you can build experiences where from different content sources potentially, but that will deliver at high performance and with high engagement. So a lot of the focus of those services that we've built are really all go back to what do you need today, and we think at least in the foreseeable future, what are the things that we need in order to deliver experiences or that you build state of the art websites, web pages, landing pages, storefronts, self-service applications, whatever it is that you're delivering through the web browser, mobile, and desktop.
And for those who know AEM, is this replacing parts of it? Is it an add-on? How does it fit into the family? Of what people know historically.
Correct, correct. I think as for existing AEM folks, you probably know there's an author and there's a publish, right? Now, both are using the same technology today. We're running the same code, basically an author and publish. What is changing now, we're kind of decoupling AEM, not in an author publish way, but in a content management and delivery way.
Mm-hmm.
So both for author, the delivery is going to get replaced with Edge Delivery Services. And on publish, similarly, the delivery gets replaced with Edge Delivery Services. I use the word replaced, which might sound a little bit like, oh, wait, what? This is really, and first and foremost, it's augmenting the existing setup.
Yep.
But, and I'm speaking longer term, the idea certainly is that Edge Delivery Services will eventually replace the publish server and delivery system that we have today. Now, again, that is just, again, I want to show where the road is going. That is not today. Today, Edge Delivery Services is augmenting your existing setup that you have with AEM today.
Got it. So we're adding it to the family. We're adding additional value, which we'll talk about in just a second. But this is an area where we believe there's benefit. But the current stack, as it stands, is still supported and getting a lot of love. This is just adding with something we feel like, if I'm using AEM today, I'm like, yeah, this will help me get to the next wave, right?
Absolutely. I think there's multiple areas where we felt like we need to, I guess I used the word propose or suggest earlier, but kind of propose a new way of doing things. And with things, I mean building websites that are really engaging. And absolutely correct, as you said, the existing stack that I usually refer to as the AEM as you know it today. And there's already two flavors using that way, right? There's a 6.5 code base that we have out there, lots of folks running on that, and then a branch of it, which is cloud service. Again, on purpose, I say it's a branch because it's ultimately the same code base. There's just slight differences between the two. And so Edge Delivery Services is not, if you think of 6.5 and cloud service as columns, Edge Delivery Services is not another column next to it. It's basically a row on top.
Got it.
Would make kind of like a diagram, you would think of, or you could say 6.5 on-premise, 6.5 managed services, and cloud service. If you think of three different delivery vehicles, which are fully supported
Yep.
and are getting and receiving new features, right? We have not we keep all those, and they all have their value and their specific customers that are using that. And so edge delivery services is really a row on top of all three, right? I think that's kind of the best way to kind of visualize how this fits together.
Got it. Got it. So then let's talk about the value. So something new from Adobe. Why would I look at this? Like it's changed. I'm gonna have to invest effort and time into this. So what's the payoff? Like why did you spend effort building out this new functionality?
Yeah. So I think there's obviously a few, but one that I think it's certainly worth talking about. I mean, others are too, but I mean, let's say talk about it first, and it is website performance. So we know, and that's not a secret. Like there's lots of research and papers, and case studies that have been written about if you as a company can make your website really, really fast, there's a whole good slew of benefits that you're going to get from that. And I think one of the ones that I'm pretty sure almost anyone is looking for is that there's just more organic traffic, which means search engines and just generally a website that is faster uh, results in more engagement. Now, more engagement might result in more conversion, maybe, maybe not, depending on what kind of business model you have on your site. But one thing that can be universally said is it improves engagement. So knowing that, right, it's almost like why aren't we all creating websites that are super fast just to maximize on that? Now, there seems to be a problem because if you look at the statistics, and there's the HTTP archive is actually a good source for that, um, you just see that websites are not fast, and so there seems to be a problem. Like, and the problem, and of course, we all know what the problem is. It's not easy. It's hard to
Yeah.
create websites that are really fast. And now there's books about it. You can read about it. There's specialists and experts on that. But even with, I guess, all the expert advice, it is still very hard to achieve. And I think this, first and foremost, was our kind of thing. Like we set ourselves the goal. How could we create the world fastest websites? And so we just tried that out. And then once we actually figured it out ourselves, which I know was a journey on its own, we said, well, maybe there's a way to productize that. And so edge delivery services, and first and foremost, a lot of the architectural choices come from that wish, I guess, or that giant experiment I'm sometimes referring to it as what would happen if all our AEM customers would have the fastest website in the world? What would happen to their business? What would happen to just generally again, it's lots of these benefits. Like, and I think that's what motivates us. And we said, just do it, try it out, let's see what it takes to do it. Uh, so that's
So
how we got
I
here.
have to ask, a lot of this at first glance sounds like something that we normally say the CDN would do, right? So how does edge delivery services work in that environment?
That is correct. You're absolutely spot on. Um, the CDN, of course, today used by not all, but a lot of the websites today, um, was promised as being this part that you put in front of your website and it will make your website fast. And it obviously does. But there's more to that. A CDN or a good CDN configuration will get you quite a way, right? Particularly when you think of globally, people, you have websites that have global
Hmm.
audience, right? Without CDN, it's almost impossible to really achieve good numbers. But there's more to that. And so what edge delivery services is, and I think it gets often kind of misunderstood, maybe the naming doesn't help either, is that people are like, oh, I already have a CMS. Sorry, I already have a CDN.
Hmm.
I don't need another one. So I'm good. Thank you. Can we talk about something else? Right. So um, just very clear, edge delivery services is not a CDN. It's actually not make kind of joke. Sometimes I call it the wingman or wingwoman, wingwoman
Yeah.
of the CDN. It really runs next to the CDN. If you think of architecturally or deployment, the CDNs are servers hosted in data centers globally, and they're caching your files. So edge delivery services, you can think of it runs next to your CDN. That's very specifically said. So we're not actually giving you a CDN. You have to bring your own. Now, of course, if you don't have one, we'll gladly give you one too. But if you have one already, you can configure edge delivery services to run next to your CDN. And then with that is a key part of the architecture to make sure when the requests are coming in from the browsers to the CDN, that the CDN then can use its wingman,
Yeah.
edge delivery services, to really fulfill all the different requests and whatever is being asked for in order to get this delivered and make that website fast.
Got it. So the two working side by side to actually deliver on the end goal. So, I mean, speaking of speed, I mean, there's a lot of customers who are using CDN now, but their performance is, if we go and look at their page scores, it's 20, 40, maybe someone gets excited by 60. You're talking about like the perfect score, right? And so tell me the difference between, starting where you are and trying to optimize versus the approach with edge delivery services.
Okay, very good point. So there's this ideal, and so Google introduced the Lighthouse score for different parts, and one of them is performance, right? So the mobile Lighthouse score for performance is a good benchmark for a lab, like if you just do an individual test, to kind of see and how your site is doing. Again, Lighthouse score has its challenges in sense of sometimes sites are being shown with scores are very low, even though in real world they're actually not that slow. Again, there's that aside, um, there's this Lighthouse score of 100, and so it's interesting. You actually, when you go back and how did they found out that grading, right? So the way Google did that is they went and looked at the real world data out there and took the data set of the spread, if you think of a histogram,
Mm-hmm.
of where most websites are. And then they said, you know what? The 70, like you have this like fastest and slowest, right? So they said the 75 percentile of that, if you're within those 25 percentile that is fast, that is considered good. It happened to be more or less around 2.5 seconds for LCP. Again, there's
Mm-hmm.
different milestones during rendering that have different what's being considered good. But so they took that and said, if you are within the 75 percentile, or in fast, like if you
Yep.
think of the histogram, that is considered a good score, right? And a good score, I think, is I don't remember. I think it's 80 up. I was like, what was that again? I think it's 80 up. So 100 really represents the fastest website in the world. So if you achieve 100, you are among the fastest websites in the world. And there's not that many, actually. It's a kind of lonely place up there. And again, so we said, well, why try 80 if we can do 100, right? So I think that's ultimately, so we said, okay, let's just do 100. Now, knowing that there will be challenges along the way, I don't think it's fair, but let's just try for that. And so we were actually surprised how far we were able to go. And again, some folks said, well, but if I want to do 100, there's all these things that I cannot do on my website, and I can't do this, I can't do that because it's so limiting. So in order to achieve that, it is certainly true. If you just create a Hello World website that just has Hello World
Yeah.
on it, that's it. Yes, it's going to have a Lattice score of 100, of course. But as soon as you start adding things, you don't have Lattice score of 100 anymore. And I think that's exactly what we figured out. We figured it out that there's basically almost nothing you cannot do. You can do anything you want, and you still achieve a Lattice score of 100, but you have to follow an exact path for that. And I think that's the part that we productize.
Yeah. It sounds a little bit like magic, but where I think there's two parts to this question, but one is, is it magic? Like, what's Adobe doing here that's special? But secondly, like, is this just for static content, or like, what types of experiences are you optimizing here?
Okay. Yeah, it's great question. So the magic part, I think, it's not magic at all, actually, but it feels magic, I guess, because it's so fast. Um, the magic part is that if you have to, or we went on rethinking just the way resources have to be stored on the server in order to be delivered to kind of get to that. So there's a server component to it where, if you think of how do you organize the resources for your site, right? There's a client side part to it. It's like what runs in the browser. So you can, and I know that sometimes people make this like, oh, I want my websites highly dynamic and personalized, but I want them at this like the same speed as a static site. Unfortunately, we'll have to come to the realization that you do a beautiful site, and it's completely static, and you will not achieve a light of score of 100. So um, because the only way to actually achieve a light of score of 100 is to have a dynamic site. I know that feels counterintuitive,
Yeah.
um, but it has something to do that with when a web page is started to get loaded, the home page or a landing page or whatever it is, frankly any page on the site, um, you really want to focus on what is visible to the visitor in the first place. And so that is something that is actually highly dynamic. You can't actually achieve that with something that is static because
Hmm.
you don't know mobile. There's different things that are visible to a mobile user than to a desktop user. So how do you want to do that? So I think so. Yes, sites that are run on edge delivery services are actually not static at all. They're actually dynamic. That's the only way to actually achieve a ladder of score of 100 because again, with static sites, you actually can't do it. I mean, unless the static page is just one HTML with some text on it. I mentioned the Hello World example earlier. But if it's a reasonable site, but has a reasonably long page, you cannot achieve a ladder score of 100 if it's just a static page.
Got it. So there's some dynamic elements here. So let's get into the details a little bit. Did Adobe end up creating a new JavaScript framework? Like, what's the approach here?
Yeah, I love that question. Now, so I think maybe that's a good point is just to step back just a few steps and kind of understand the landscape of front end and what choices you have today, right? And it goes maybe a little bit into the question that you had earlier, where you say the different strategies versus like, should I just improve my new site, or should I improve my existing site, or should I just start from scratch, right?
Yeah.
If I want to really achieve good performance, I think it goes into the same way. So I think today's front end world with front end technology stacks, again, not all of them, but a majority of them were invented or were conceived and designed and concepted around limitations of the web. And with that, I mean limitations of browsers, limitations of servers, limitations of protocols in between. And that's why they work the way they work today. But things have changed. Browsers have evolved significantly. There's lots of new APIs and features that have come into browsers. Browsers are always up to date on our computers, on our mobile phones, right? They're constantly getting
Yeah.
updated. So there's these new features that are actually available. And you got on the server and the protocol side of things have changed, right? Now HTTP2 is pretty much standard, or there's no problem anymore. So you can rely on certain HTTP2 features today as you're doing architectures. And I think that's also a key reason why we felt like we have to propose something new here. So we do not want to call whatever we did a framework. And the reason is because it isn't a framework. Now, again, I can totally understand if folks will refer to as what we did as a framework, because again, there's different definitions of framework, and
Yep.
depending which one you take, it might fit into it or not. But if you ask me what's your framework, my framework is called Web Platform. So it's basically what's already built in the browser. So whatever, there's lots and lots and lots of features that the browsers have today um, that weren't around just a year ago or 2 years ago. And so just being able to leverage these latest capabilities, plus banking on the fact that HTTP2 is available and so on, we are proposing, maybe to some folks that have been doing front end for a long time, and have been using technologies for front end for a long time, they initially, when they see what we're doing, they're gonna say, well, they're gonna be skeptical first. They're gonna be like, "You sure this works? That sure doesn't feel like a good idea." Trust me, when the development folks that worked on that showed it to me first, I'm like, that is not gonna work. And I think it's fair. That's totally, I'm absolutely accepting that feedback because it is counter to a lot of best practices. It is counter to a lot of concepts that people have been using for years. So I'm just gonna tell you one example. Again, there's a few of those in there, but I'm gonna give you one example of one thing that we do different, and I will explain you why. So a very common thing to do is to build your front end resources, and you have something like a bundler, like a code piece that will take all your JavaScript, all your
Yeah.
CSS, and trying to optimize that and create artifacts that you put on your servers for the browser to consume. Um, HTTP services is a no-build infrastructure. So there is no build process, no bundler is being used in order to deliver the site. And I know that in itself is like, lots of questions that I'm usually getting around this. I think the main reason is really because we help you in a way to organize your code and organize your front end, and then use that to really control what gets delivered when. But we don't need a bundler for that. You need to, like, the original source code needs to be organized in a certain way. I want to describe it that way. Again, if you look into projects, you instantly visible of how it works. But I think that's one of the, I guess, maybe surprising things. It goes against a lot of the things that folks have been doing for many, many years. But again, they have been doing this for many, many years because there was limitations that they had to go around or go away. So that's why, coming back to your question earlier, what is it? Is it easier to start from scratch with HTTP services or
Yeah.
optimizing my current site? And one of the design goals, and that sounds so crazy, but one of the design goals that we've had was really thinking about how could we make this thing so easy to use as a developer? Okay. And so a quick to build so that it takes you less time to redo your site or redo your front end. Say that way. You don't redo your site, you redo your
Yeah.
front end. Redo the front end of your site with HTTP services, then incrementally improving your site to get to the same yardstick,
Yep.
to the same goal.
Okay.
And yeah, again, whatever that is proven or not, we certainly tried, and we certainly have interesting data there that proves that we've achieved that. Of course, mileage may vary. It has a slightly different project velocity and knows their own code, but it's certainly true that we try to design something that is as efficient as possible and as quick as possible for folks to implement. And again, we're obviously inviting everybody to try it out and tell us what they think.
I think the question that comes to mind there, and if someone's watching this and they're like, yeah, but I use React or Angular or some framework today for my project, what's our response and what's the reaction been when you've talked to other developers?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a good point. So I think, again, there's various ways to look at it. So I think the first one is the more web app frameworks, in particular React, um, were built to build rather complicated web applications, I usually refer to them as long session applications. So it's an application where you open a browser window, you go in there, and you potentially spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever in there.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a mobile game or it's like, I mean, it was invented for Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Or you're scrolling up and down your social network, or it's Gmail, whatever. You're editing emails, um, and so for these kind of long session applications, I feel like frameworks like React are a really good choice. Um, and for I guess the most part of what customers do with Adobe Experience Manager, these are 90% for sure. 90%, they're websites.
Yeah.
I'm not saying static websites, okay? They're dynamic, they're personalized, they're running A/B tests on it. There's all this stuff happening. They're not, again, there's self-service portals where you log in and can look at your status of your subscription and whatnot and all the things. You can change your address. So it's interactive, but it's not an application where you spend on the same URL, you potentially spending whatever 20, 30 minutes on it. So it's not that complicated. And so I think for web sites, like dynamic
Hmm.
websites, I feel like these frameworks are, I don't know, maybe kind of my own opinion, or they're overkill. And the efforts for you to build these experiences are significant for the fact that a lot of those experiences are temporal. Right? Websites change a lot, change
Yeah.
often. They should change often. It should be easy to change them often. So auxiliary services really focus on this websites that change often. You want to change often, including design. So it should be very easy to bring in a new hero design or whatever design elements you want to bring in. So this very quick, um, I don't want to use this throwaway because you don't throw stuff away, but it's there for a moment, it's there for a week, it's there for 2 weeks, and then you do something else. You're trying things out. The web should be a place where you experiment, where you try to find things out. And I think codifying things in specific components and like build process and all that stuff feels so rigid. You need to have
Yeah.
something where you just can, it's a canvas where you can experiment. So I think that's where our aim comes in, and this idea of really being very lightweight when it comes to things. Now, having said that, let's say you build a React application that is very specific and does something very complicated, but you've already built that. Be your guest. You can absolutely bring that into Edge Delivery Services, no matter what framework it's built in, and you can bring it in again. So here I'm talking not about building the whole experience with it, but you
Hmm.
have maybe, I don't know, maybe you're a car brand and you have a thing where you can choose your dealer to do a test drive, or you have a car configurator that you've built that's very complicated. Yeah, please don't redo those. No, absolutely not. Just bring them in. But again, the homepage or maybe the product pages and other things where where you want to experiment, where you want to try things out. Maybe you want to go for a little bit of a more lighter weight.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. So, I mean, so far we've talked about performance and edge delivery service, bringing the business value. It's not disruptive to developers. It's actually going to allow them to achieve the end goal faster. And, back to basics, using web standards, using, JavaScript in its core rather than a framework, on top, but still supporting frameworks if needed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about authors, content developers, and what's their experience.
Yeah. So this was actually not really part of the plan. I know
Yep.
sometimes people are surprised about that, but it wasn't actually. We really want to focus on like the delivery side of things. But as we've been experimenting with delivery, there's something that really bothered us for a long time, and it's this thing when we go back to our customers and our clients and ask them, where is the original content that you eventually publish in the CMS? really often. And no surprise, I think, to anyone, the answer is Word, Google Docs, or any word processing tool that allows collaboration, that allows sharing, that allows folks to iterate over it, to kind of brainstorm. And then we're like, you know what? Maybe we should really try find a way to capture that content from there instead of ultimately what in a lot of cases happens that somebody has to copy paste that into the CMS.
Yeah.
Again, there's lots of use cases where the CMS UIs as we have it today is being used, so I'm not want to diminish that use case at all. But there are still a good amount of places where, like if somebody creates a Word document, structures that halfway, like in a structure, that this would be a great source for publishing already, and you don't really have to do this again.
And for those
Another
who've
one is
seen,
Excel. There's something, go ahead.
Word, etc., it's like, haven't we had Word import into CMSs for some time now? What's the difference?
Yeah, I think it's true. Again, using somehow connecting your CMS with Word is not new. I think the big difference now, I guess, because we've kind of relooked at this issue, is that with SharePoint and Google Docs, the content's already in the cloud, right? Versus when you were dealing with files and attachments, right,
Yeah.
where you had to kind of import and convert. Now the content's already in the cloud, so if you think of cloud files, right? There's no longer files in a file system; they're cloud files, and
Yep.
there's APIs to access those files. So I think that is the significant difference. We're not actually supporting uploading Word documents. We're really just using the APIs that these platforms have because the content's already in the cloud. So you're already managing it there. So you manage what's just taken from there. So that I think that's the big difference. We're not importing content or anything. It's really where when you hit that publish button within Word, we're doing API calls to SharePoint Online or Google Docs and or Google Drive API or whatever. But for the Google Docs, and then we get the content from there. Now again, this is not limited to just those two. It's just those two that we've implemented so far,
Yep.
because they're very popular. Um, but there are obviously other choices. If there's other choices that will establish itself over time, when you have your favorite word processing tool that has an API, that's important. It's in the cloud already. I think these are the good choices for us to kind of work on that integration, or provide APIs for you to integrate this yourself.
So going back to what you were saying right at the beginning around focusing on the head and delivering the content. So it sounds like take the content from wherever it is. If it's already in Word, we take it from there. If it's in other sources, we extend on that. So if I'm an existing AEM customer, do I have to move everything to Word? Like, what's the plan there?
Yeah, I think that's certainly an area where I think currently there's quite a bit of confusion, and let me explain that a little bit. First of all, the answer is no, but let me get into explain that a little bit. Um, so the reason why we've been pushing on this what we call document-based authoring is because we feel like it's a great way just for folks to try out and figure out how edge delivery services works. And also, again, there's lots of projects where a company doesn't typically just have one CMS. We wish it would just be one, but typically they have three or four. WordPress here, Drupal over there, AEM here. So there's always a good list of CMSs that are being used. And I think we certainly want to make sure that we somehow find a way to give folks an option for all those other sites that they have to manage that. So a more lighter weight approach felt like a right thing for us to also build. Right next to, you think of AEM as launches and multi-site management and governance and workflows and that. So
Mm-hmm.
basically having a lighter weight approach using obviously the same delivery mechanism and the same development model, right, for that. I think that's one thing. So I know it caused a little confusion, or still causes confusion, but again, we're here to hopefully explain that this all fits together. Now, if you think of AEM as it exists today, obviously has its own built-in rendering engine for the HTML. And with decoupling that, we're basically are going to use edge delivery services to actually deliver the content that is in AEM today, or that you're planning to put into AEM down the road, right? Um, so it's really this approach that we want to take the content, we like be another way of saying that our strategy so far has been, well, there's one repository. You have to move any and everything into that repository in order to be efficient in managing that.
Yeah.
Now, again, there's nothing wrong about that. And it's still very much true. But we also see that in reality today, with the contents already being in the cloud, and companies are very, I guess, comfortable with having the content, not necessarily having to have the content in one single place. But if the content is already in the cloud and it has its own kind of governance layer there, permissions and versioning and all that, the companies are comfortable with saying, yeah, that's totally fine to have the website being powered by, this part of the site is powered from the content from over there. This part of the site is powered by content from over here. So I think we see that, again, given the SLAs and these services are available, and the content's already in cloud, and the
Yeah.
workforce that's working on this is globally distributed, and they're working remote wherever they are. I think just that has also changed the mental model around this only having to have one CMS repository to rule them all. What we do want to certainly bring home, though, is to have a kind of a central way of managing the front end, because that is really tedious if you do have multiple code bases for your delivery of the content, because then that's really harms the visitor of the site. If depending on which section they are on the site, the navigation looks different, the whatever the design looks different, just because you happen to have different systems that are rendering that. I think that is a real problem we're trying to
Yeah.
solve. So consolidating the way you build front end. But I think folks are getting more comfortable with having the content in multiple places. What we're trying to embrace here.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing, just so we're on the same page, today, Word is the source, or Google Docs. Lots more sources coming, support for more sources. So we have that consistent delivery tier for every touch point for a customer in the journey. You get the same performance, velocity, and other characteristics of the edge.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it.
So that's definitely, again, our midterm goals here. So far, again, we're supporting. I mean, the work that is going on right now. And if you think of maybe again a way to kind of step back, how do we think we could introduce a change that is as significant as edge delivery services to our existing customers and ecosystem of partners and implementation folks, right? How can we do that? And I think our we've kind of had just three-step strategy of us to roll this out. The first one, which we just completed, was to spend over 2 years actually getting a good amount of sites into production end to end. And in order to prove out, many different aspects of that new edge delivery services architecture. So while yes, on October 10th, we made GA of edge delivery services. This didn't mean that now we're onboarding customers into production. We've been running customers in production for 2 years already,
Yeah.
right? But we've been co-developing together with these customers to really make sure that there's a good, product fit for what the folks want to do out there. Now with general availability, it kind of like gets away from that, I guess, limitation that we had, where we said, yo, you can only deploy that if Adobe is somehow involved in the project. Because we wanted to make sure everything's going all right, and we really see the customer getting the value. And now we're saying, you know what? I think we're good. So the next phase now has started. The next phase really focuses on making sure the ecosystem. So with that, I mean, we have a good set of freelancers that going from customer to customer to implement. We have established implementation companies that have dedicated teams that focus on Adobe Experience Manager. We have engineering teams within customers dedicated teams that work on AEM within existing companies that use AEM. So we want really everyone to get a chance to try it out and get familiar with it, right? So that's why we also created this new site, which is called AEM.live. And so AEM.live is our destination for all of you folks out there that are implementing AEM on a daily basis or owning or running AEM in some shape or form to really try to understand what we're doing here. And we wanted to make this as easy as possible. And that's also why when you go, for example, you go through a tutorial that is there and you can just go to AIM Live and it says build my site. There's a big button there and you can just get started right away. We wanted to make this as easy as possible so for as many people as possible within our existing ecosystem to really try it out and
Yeah.
get familiar with it. And therefore, we're, for example, this tutorial asks you to use a Google Drive because we felt like that's something that everybody probably will have access to, versus telling them, well, you have to connect this to your existing AEM, which will cause a whole kinds of questions and potentially will not allow you to just do this tutorial in a few hours. Right. So I think that just also understanding why it's not like because we feel like Google Docs is the best option here. It's a good option,
Yeah.
but it's really the one that allows you to
Fast
really
track.
try
Yeah.
out this product as quick as possible, get familiar with it, focus not on necessarily on content management, but focus on the actual how does Extra Delivery Services itself works. So you can start planning how you as a company or partner or freelancer or whatever folks, how you think you kind of start really leverage that and use that for your own deployments and for your own plans looking into 2024.
Got it. So I go to am.live, I can access the technology, I can build a site. What's your guidance? Like, what should brands be doing? Should they just start rebuilding their .com site right now? Or, like, how have you seen brands lean into this, as an approach?
Okay, so I think pretty straightforward. Pick any site where maybe it's a good place to experiment with that. Don't take the homepage. Don't just go straight for the big one. Just take something. Maybe it's a site that doesn't run on AEM. It's kind of more like selfishly saying that or whatever you have running. It's not on AEM. Maybe WordPress or whatever. Drupal, you name it. I know, I'm gonna say it right there, but something that you have, or maybe some other things that you've built in the past and some that you want, and redo it, right? See how quickly it takes you to redo that site, and that's just to I don't know, maybe in like maybe you're able to do this in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You can just redo that site on Edge Delivery Services and end to end see how this works, right? And
Yeah.
spending the time learning and not just try to build some example. Really, just set yourself a goal of get a site in production, and so you at the end of the day have something that actually end to end works, and you see how the whole process is not just the first 5 steps of the tutorial.
Yeah.
And I think then once you see that, I think that makes that it should help, or we strongly feel it helps to plan the next steps. Feel like, okay, you know what, maybe there's new initiatives coming up. We should work on those. Or maybe, and then it comes down to performance, which we talked about earlier with the benefits of performance in higher engagement and conversion down the road, or SEO, more organic traffic. You kind of would you think where would that have the biggest impact for your company? And that might be a homepage, that might be landing pages because you're driving a lot of top of funnel activities with trying to acquire more traffic, or again it could be wherever you feel like this would have the biggest impact on your business. And I think that's where you probably should focus on and try to leverage there to then really not just again getting to know the technology, which you might do with your first project, but really starting to harness the benefit of it. And then with that, kind of opening the doors to eventually redo everything, right? But again, this is, there's it's depending on how obviously, important it is. Now, so it's
Yeah.
just maybe one example. I spent quite a bit of time with folks to doing commerce with AEM or just commerce with Adobe Commerce, right? And I think that certainly is a category where you can put a dollar amount on this thing.
Hmm.
And I think that's where it gets really interesting, because redoing a storefront is not an easy feat, just generally because of the complexity of a storefront. But we have seen that when we do that, there is very interesting what as a merchant of the benefits you can get from that. And I think that one is where you really want to. It's good to start with something small first to get used to it, but you should probably plan your bigger projects pretty soon, or pretty like because I think that's where you're gonna get a lot of benefits. And I know the currently it's obviously not a good time because we've got November, the big holiday season's coming up. But I think if you think of next year, trying to
Hmm.
figure out when this would be a good fit for you, I think that is, and then we're working on together with Edge Delivery Services and Adobe Commerce, to really create a good foundation for that for folks that want to use Edge Delivery Services together with Adobe Commerce.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you mentioned a very good point. If everyone's locked down, no deployments at the moment, just keep the lights on for, the holiday season. Maybe it's a good time to kickstart a project on the side, do some experimentation with edge delivery services. So, look, I mean, apart
Correct. Yeah.
from
If you
going
do
to
have if you do
am.live,
happen to have some time, please do that. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know that developers are also busy during that time, so they're
I'm not saying
typically
people are
not
kicking around
twiddling their
doing
thumbs
nothing,
either.
but it's a good opportunity, and I think just to be clear,
Correct.
go to am.live, have a play. Obviously, talk to your Adobe account team as well, for formal support. But we also have a Discord channel, right? And there's lots of Adobe folk, engineering folk as well. So don't look at the tutorial, etc., in isolation. Go and join the community. I'll put in the show notes how to get onto the Discord channel. But Cedric, yeah, and I know you've been involved in some of that. What would I find if I start to engage in this community, apart from a whole bunch of crazy people chatting about edge delivery services?
So I think going back to like performance and helping with engagement on the site, um, we want to really build that community of folks that are really passionate about building fast websites. And I think we've to some extent have that over obviously already by just the virtue of providing the technology, and our engineers and consultants and folks are being part of that community. But I think also among customers, we really would love to invite everyone that is really passionate about this topic, to join us, because while yes, we have productized a good amount of things when it comes to performance, there's still a lot of challenges to be solved out there. And the
Yep.
individual basis across customers, you will see things that are like, how I'm going to solve this. And I think the Discord community we started really wants to focus on that. Like you can come in and says, "Hey, I got this particular JavaScript that I got from this vendor that I have to add to my site, and but when I do add it, I'm getting a 20 or 30 point ding on LiDAR score.
Hmm.
Anyone has an idea of how to make this better?" So this is the thing that we're discussing. These are things where we're like, you know what, hey, somebody else will call out. I've done this. I know, like I show you how to do this. You load the JavaScript like this, do this, make this change, in order to avoid doing that. So I think that is correct. We're trying to establish a community, and I think we're on a good path there to do that. And we definitely want to welcome everyone, because that is there's optimizing the Martech stack is really a game of the more people you can bring together into a town square to talk about that, the more you're going to find solutions for it, just
Yeah.
because there's the entropy of the problem is so high.
Great idea. Great idea. Hey, Cedric, we're almost out of time, but thank you for taking the overview of edge delivery services. I
You're
know
welcome.
people will be, heading straight to start building something. Any parting thoughts? Anything that you haven't covered that you think, hey, I want to make sure we mention this?
Yeah. I think we're sure not done yet. I think there's still quite a bit of things that we feel like we need to change, we want to change. I think I want to call out a few. One thing is really like how can we make it as easy as possible for you to experiment? I mean, I mentioned that earlier, experimentation, or to personalize without impact on performance,
Hmm.
which is again, there's already a support for it available today, but it's an active part of our development. Further, generative AI brings in a whole slew of interesting possibilities, and combining like this kind of, I guess, dynamic side rendering that we do combined with generative AI will allow some, we think it would be some really interesting use cases around, again, bringing back to personalization. So this kind of idea of a hyper personalized side.
Yep.
Yeah, so these are areas that keeps us busy now that we've done the first part there. And so we're definitely looking forward. As I mentioned, we kind of co-develop the features that are available today with clients over the last 2 years. And so we're not gonna stop doing that. We're gonna keep doing that. So particularly in the areas of Gen AI, in the areas of personalization, where we're currently working with clients to co-innovate, to develop the next feature, next set of capabilities that will come to everyone on edge delivery services. So if you have any one of those challenging projects and some ideas that you want to do, don't don't be shy. Reach out. Again, I think the Discord communities is a great place to bring up some of those ideas, some of the things that you want to build to kind of form teams around this and see whatever we might have something working on it already. And then we can start sharing that and
Yeah.
keep collaborating on it.
Fantastic. So it sounds like there's lots more to talk about. Can we get you back on the show to share more in a future session?
Sure,
All right.
absolutely. So yeah, but there's one condition: you all have to try it at Delivery Services. Okay?
Sounds like a
I want to hear your
promise from
feedback.
everyone. All right,
Let
we'll
me
be
know.
there.
You know where to reach
Everyone join
me.
us.
Let me know.
Great. All right. Cedric, thank you again for spending some time today. We'll let you get back to building amazing things and let's wrap up the show. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.